Good evening and welcome to the City of Oxnard Planning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, September 1st, 2022. We are meeting at a different location in the Oxnard Public Library, Meeting Room B. This is at 251 South A Street. A quick housekeeping item as shown on the agenda and online. Please email all written public comments to planning@oxnard.org. Those wishing to speak during the meeting may do so in person or virtually. For in-person speakers, please submit your speaker card to the Commission Secretary. For virtual speakers, please view the bottom of your screens for the call-in number, meeting ID, and passcode. If you dial in only, you may press *9 to raise or lower your hand. If you're using the desktop Zoom app, you may use the raise hand feature. You may also submit your request to speak by visiting oxnard.org/city-meetings by 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Because the meeting is electronic, all votes will be done by roll call. And with that, we'll move to our Commission Secretary to establish our quorum.
Chair Chavez.
Here.
Vice Chair Abreu.
Here.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Here. Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Knapp.
Here. Thank you for that. And with that, we'll move to our next item, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. And Vice Chair, would you mind leading us?
Certainly.
Thank you for that. I forgot to mention that our meeting this evening will be adjourning in the memory of our Supervisor Carmen Ramirez of the 5th District for Ventura County. And if you will all indulge me just for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed with our agenda. Our next item, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding any item not on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission may do so at this time. However, the commission cannot take action on any items presented during public comments and will be referred to the commission secretary. All public comment speakers will have 3 minutes. And Commissioner Secretary, just to confirm, we did not have anyone sign up for this, correct? Thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and proceed with our agenda. Moving to our consent agenda, which is D1 and D2, which is approval of our minutes from our June 2nd and June 16th meeting. Commissioners, are there any additions, revisions, or a motion for them? Vice Chair.
I move the approval of the minutes as distributed for June 2 and June 16, 2022.
Second. Thank you for the second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as distributed for June 2nd and June 16th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Abreu.
Aye.
Commissioner Knapp.
Aye.
Aye. Yes.
Aye. Thank you for that. We'll now move to our next item, which is our ex parte declarations for public hearing. Vice Chair Rejo.
Yes, Chair. I will recuse myself on agenda item F1 due to 18 U.S. Code sections 203 and sections 205. At this time, I would like to ask the chair what he would like me to do during this item.
I'll turn to legal counsel for direction.
If you are, excuse me, if you're recusing yourself in this item, you should step down from the dais. It is your call whether you wish to remain in the audience or step outside into the lobby.
Given that, I will step into the lobby and I'd appreciate it if someone can get me when the agenda item finishes. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair. And we'll have our Vice Chair recuse himself. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
None. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nash.
Nothing, thank you.
And none for myself. So we'll give our Vice Chair a moment. We will go ahead and proceed to our next item, which is item F1. The project name is Vineyard Retail LLC, doing business as Legendary Commercial Cannabis Business Retail Special Use Permit, Planning and Zoning Permit number 21-516-05, Special Use Permit, Cannabis Retail. This is going to be located at 2561 North Vineyard Avenue. A request to permit the operation of a commercial cannabis retail facility within an existing 2,281 square foot commercial suite of a 10,834 square foot multi-tenant commercial building on a 0.84 acre site within the general commercial plan development zone. Proposed development includes tenant improvements to installation of an interior wall partitioning, plumbing upgrades, upgrades to an existing fire alarm system, security upgrades to the existing building, installation of a new secure doors and windows, and parking lot improvements. The cannabis retail operations will be conducted between the hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. The proposed project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to Section 15301 existing facilities of the California Environmental Quality Act. This is filed by Michael Allen on behalf of the Vineyard Retail LLC, doing business as Legendary Oxnard. Our city staff person is Randy Baez, assistant planner. The recommendation for the planning commission is to find the project to be categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA section 15301 existing facilities and approval of resolution 2022-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 21-516-05 special use permit subject to certain findings and conditions. As a reminder to my colleagues and the public, a pre-recorded staff presentation is available on the city's YouTube channel in accordance with Measure M, and we'll turn to our city staff person if they have any additional information. Mr. Vice.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I don't have any additional information, but myself and the applicant are here for any questions, and the applicant does have a presentation ready to go as well.
Thank you, commissioners. If there's no objection, we'll listen to the applicant's presentation and then do a general questioning. I see no objection, so we'll have the applicant give their presentation and then we'll ask questions all at the same time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, all city staff for all of their support and help along the way. And thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for the time to speak today. Appreciate it. I'm Michael Allen. I'm representing Vineyard Retail. We work under the trade name of Legendary Organics. I'm here along with my partner, Ned Davis, our general manager, Brittany Desjardins, and our security consultant, Terry Blevins. Sorry, is that presentation up? Great, thank you. Great. So our mission at Legendary is really focused on being the highest, providing the highest quality product, making sure that we're providing an education to our patients, really providing the support that patients need, and ensuring that there's affordable access to medicinal cannabis products. We are focused on Oxnard and Ventura County. We're not a statewide operation. We're not looking to grow out of the Ventura County region. We're a Ventura County-based business, fully focused. We have a Thousand Oaks location as well, which I'll get into. And a very important part of our business is really making sure that we're a contributing positive member of the community. So we look forward to doing that in the city of Oxnard. Our partners, we have 5 partners that make up the ownership of Legendary Organics. We have substantial experience in compliant cannabis business ownership and operations. Collectively, we have a total of 19 years of cannabis experience. But beyond cannabis, we come from a wide range of professional backgrounds, commercial real estate development, cannabis law, pharmacy, healthcare, entertainment. So we bring along with us a lot of professional expertise outside of cannabis as well. As I mentioned, we are local. I still have a house here in Oxnard. It was my first home that I owned. The majority of the ownership is Ventura County based. And but I think what's most important about us as an ownership team is we are professionals who operate with integrity. I know that's something that is not easy to evaluate sitting here at a planning commission meeting, but it's something that we've proven throughout our business operations and our career. Our current operations, we have a retail location in Thousand Oaks. We are one of 2 commercial operators. We started as a full medical facility, so we have a great deal of experience being able to provide for medical clients. But we have now transitioned to a full adult use recreational dispensary. We've developed a great relationship with our city, with our neighbors. We've not had a single complaint or any issues arise at our location in Thousand Oaks. The location that we're presenting on, hopefully everyone's aware of it. It's at 2561 East Vineyard or North Vineyard, depending on how we're stating it. These are renderings from the inside of the location, very similar to our Thousand Oaks location in terms of quality and the way in which we set up the operation. This is within Vineyard Shopping Retail Center. So this is an image, hopefully this jogs everybody's memory. In terms of location, one note about the location is it's very easily accessible from the 101 freeway. We're about 900 feet from the exit. The shopping center itself has a very easy ingress and egress. So we'll be able to operate a fairly high volume business without any real traffic impacts to the city. In terms of parking, we are compliant to city code. We also have 9 spots that are designated specifically for our operation. That's very consistent with our business in Thousand Oaks, the same amount of parking spots. We have been able to, again, operate a high volume business without any complaints from our neighbors in terms of parking. And in addition to the parking, we'll also be adding a bike rack. We're directly across the street from public transport, but we are definitely walkable from El Rio West communities and River Park. I'm going to hand this off just for a minute so our security consultant, Terry Blevins, can run us a little bit through the security measures that we have in place. And then I have a couple more comments and then we'll be ready for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Michael. So just quickly about me and my company. My name is Terry Blevins. I'm a retired local and federal law enforcement officer. I'm a Department of State certified security consultant. I'm also a licensed PPO in the state of California. I've conducted over 450 security plans in the state of California, considered a nationally as an expert on cannabis. We've been working on the security. We started working on the security at TO. We currently have security guards at their site in TO. And now we're working on this location. I've been involved with the development of this from the beginning. Just briefly, just to go over sort of the plan for this location is plan on having 1 to 2 security guards on site during all operational hours. 1 security guard will be in the lobby and the other one will be making rounds. If traffic is low, then we might just have 1 security guard that's doing a couple of different functions. My philosophy on cannabis security is to focus heavily on the electronic security infrastructure. because we find that to rely on a security guard really is a very imperfect system. And so one of the things that we did at TO, and the same thing that we're doing here, is to put in absolutely the best possible equipment so that we can monitor at all times. We have a remote monitoring center that monitors the alarms and the cameras as well if there's an incident, and then we can if anything happens after hours, then we can respond after hours. Obviously, complete camera system, an intrusion system, panic alarms, as well as electronic access control with access cards, and all of those systems work to integrate together to create a really robust electronic security system. Obviously, we're going to have a pretty extensive lighting system around the perimeter so that we can monitor the site at night, but without creating either a traffic hazard or creating a nuisance for neighboring businesses or for neighboring residents. Normally, I would end my comments there, but I have to tell you that my experience with this ownership and management team has been really incredible. When we started working with them at TO, you know, and I will not work with a cannabis operator that is either illegal or doing things in a non-compliant way. Integrity is important to me because I have my own reputation to keep up. And I can tell you that the level of integrity and the dedication to being compliant and doing things the right way with this team has really been impressive. My staff and I both have been constant. We always say they're our best client because they always do things the right way. And sometimes that's a little bit of a pain when you want to, you know, you have to be very diligent about doing things exactly to be compliant, but we do that and they do that. And I can absolutely vouch for the integrity of these people. I've been super impressed with them from the beginning. So are there any questions about the security plan or? Okay, thank you.
We'll continue the presentation and then we'll save those for afterwards.
Great, thank you. I will be brief, I promise. There are a couple common concerns about cannabis businesses, so I just want to address them very briefly. Odor being one of them. First, in terms of odor, I'm sure you've listened to plenty of cannabis operators. The most important thing is we are a compliant business, which means every product that comes in is pre-packaged. So really the baseline of odor is lower than commonly believed. We have a system where we have a carbon filter at each register point of use. There's also a carbon filtration system connected to our HVAC. And then there's a negative air pressure cavity. So basically what that means is the air is getting pulled into the HVAC system. It's getting scrubbed and cleaned before it gets pushed out of the building. I can tell you from our Thousand Oaks location, it works. It's very effective. If you stand outside of our store, you will not smell anything. If you stand in our store, in most parts, you're not going to smell it very much either. In terms of noise, we're no different from any other business, playing very light music in our lobby and showroom. And lighting, as Terry addressed, we will be fully compliant with all the city standards of lighting. The only additional lighting we are having is around the premises, which adds a security measure, not only for our business, but for the entire shopping center. And to address that, there is in the back alley of the shopping center, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. There is an alley that does have some general concerns there. There have been homeless people walking back there. So I do believe strongly that our security will improve security for the entire shopping center. We'll be doing regular premises rounds around that. In terms of community benefits, we said we like to be part of the community, contribute meaningfully. A couple ways in which we do that. Honestly, the city of Oxnard has done an incredible job of setting up your structure. So it really helps us do it, even though that's our plan. So local hiring practices, the minimum of 75% is really the minimum for us. We already have Oxnard residents working with us in Thousand Oaks that we're training on management, inventory. There are consultants as well. So it's a very easy transition for us to be moving the quality of service and the quality team that we have in Thousand Oaks out here to Oxnard. also have, we'll be instituting paid community service for our staff. So that will allow them to really volunteer in the community while being paid so that we are truly integrated in the community and providing support. We do have an affordable, safe access program for medicinal cannabis. So this is a sliding scale for low income or for veterans to be able to access medicinal cannabis. And then lastly, we will, of course, be making our contributions to the city. We, as ownership, will also be looking for ways that we could join boards or find other ways to contribute meaningfully to the community. So I will leave it there. We are here to answer questions. We appreciate everybody's time. And thank you again to the chair, commissioners, and really to the city staff who have been fabulous to work with.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll turn it to the commission if they have any questions. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Your Thousand Oaks dispensary, is that medicinal only or recreational also?
It's recreational as well.
Thank you. And for Mr. Baez, if I'm not mistaken, this is number 16 out of 16 permits tonight? You can just shake your head. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I'll go ahead and start with some questions and notes that I've jotted down. I think I'll start with city staff first. In terms of the community outreach, the presentation mentioned 189 agendas were sent to local residents. I believe it was something in the neighborhood of around maybe 10 people that attended. There was no public comments. Was there any questions, concerns that maybe weren't made in public, but that you observed folks expressing?
None.
Okay, so not specifically for this item here.
Would you like me to repeat that?
If everybody caught it. Yeah, probably for the camera.
Sure. The other 10 members of the public were there for other items on the agenda.
Okay, and we mentioned right now that this is like 16 out of 16. How many in general are within that general vicinity of on Vineyard from the borderline El Rio towards Vineyard and Oxnard Boulevard, where I think the furthest one west would do you know?
I believe this would be the fifth one.
The fifth one? Okay. Let's see. Okay, now for the applicant, was it Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. When did you say your operations began in Thousand Oaks?
We only opened in February of this year.
Oh, this year.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The pictures look phenomenal. So
Thank
if
you.
you're planning to adopt the same level of ambience and design, I think that it certainly looks good in the renderings that were included in the presentation. In terms of community outreach, because I know that there was a bit of a how can I say opportunity for you all, since you weren't one of the first selected within the first 16. But in terms of the community outreach that you did, were you able to reach out to some of the same local community-based organizations? Have you partnered, supported any of them up to date?
Here in Oxnard?
Yes.
No, we have not reached out here in Oxnard yet.
Okay.
We are absolutely planning to. We've reached out to our neighbors, just casual conversations, making sure they know who's coming in, and have had a positive response. I think you've heard before, this really is something that drives business for all neighbors.
Absolutely.
So we've had those conversations, but on a community outreach, we have not got there yet.
Okay. Yeah. If you have an opportunity just to go back and see some of the other applicants and their presentations, there was a full spectrum of community-based organizations that they've supported. One of the things I started to do to encourage some of the applicants was, to really kind of take stock of the community, your immediate neighbors, the organizations, the community leaders that are doing remarkable work, to serve the under-resourced, underrepresented, and other communities. And so one of the things that I would time and again just kind of mention to some folks was, there is the standard, I think Boys and Girls Club or those more well-known organizations, but close to you all, just wanted to throw one out there, Nyland Acres Promise. what is it? Nyland Promise,
Island Promise?
Nyland, so it's for the
Nyland.
Nyland Acres
it.
neighborhood,
it.
Nyland. Just a very local, very immediate neighbor to you all. I certainly do appreciate and applaud you identifying an organizational commitment to homelessness. I wish more folks, not just in this industry, but other stakeholders in the city would look at this as a remarkable opportunity to lift all our boats. And so certainly do appreciate that, but I wanted to just point that out to your group, to just look at more diverse, more smaller organizations that are really doing remarkable work in our community for some of your support as well.
Thank you for that. That's very good guidance.
Absolutely. Let's see, that intersection, also, I'm not sure how familiar you may be other than scoping out the location, has been a point of concern for the commission and for a lot of folks. I believe it's River Park. What's that intersection there?
River Park and Vineyard?
River Park and Vineyard. So it's the immediate intersection standing between you and the freeway. The Wendy's that's there now, there was a project that was brought forth to us for a Starbucks, and it really kind of became a point of contention on the traffic. Just FYI, I think that will be good for your business. But at the same time, knowing that there's 5 others in that general vicinity, I wanted to kind of point out, if you will, I think with the security part of your presentation, your consultant was saying that you all plan to have 2, and if it's slower, you might revert back to 1. I just want to strongly encourage you to, not try and cut any corners when it comes to safety, either of your employees, of our residents, or of our public. That's something that we as a commission certainly do put a premium on when it comes to public safety, and cutting back for 1 officer, especially with some of the challenges you identified also in the rear with a alley. I would strongly encourage you to not cut those safety corners for a minimal savings, because I really don't think business and revenue will be a problem for you all. Let's see.
We hope you're correct, by the way.
Yeah, no, totally. But just want to point out, because it's in contradiction to what was mentioned here. I know for some of the previous folks that have come before you, there hasn't always been this way, and I know that we kind of tiptoe to a line when we talk about this, but this commission, I believe that certainly the city leadership and our elected officials are, very pro-labor, worker friendly. And a lot of the folks that have come before you have established the relationships with UFCW, with organized labor. Again, just something that I think we would all certainly appreciate. It's up to you all. I do certainly appreciate that you made the comment that 75% of the workforce will be local, and that is phenomenal. But if there's an opportunity also for that, know that that will just further distinguish you from others. And again, something that I know that my fellow commissioners and certainly a lot of people in the city would appreciate as well. And then the last thing was the organizational focus on homelessness. Just wanted to acknowledge it once again. Thank you.
You. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been something important to us as individuals outside of business. So it's something that we're very excited to be able to carry on with us. And yes, your notes are very well taken, both in terms of looking at smaller organizations. I actually ran nonprofit organizations for many years, so I understand the importance of really being able to target organizations where a small amount of money is substantial versus some of the larger organizations where the amount of money is not, looks smaller.
Yes, sir.
And in terms of UFCW, absolutely. It's part of who we are in terms of that we ensure our workers have the opportunity to come together. And also it's something that I don't think we'll have much of a choice on after we hit 20 employees. We will be there, and that will be very quick.
Awesome.
So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Meyer.
And yeah, I was gonna focus on that project labor agreement piece because you've got 15 other approved cannabis retails in our city. You've got the 8 in Port Hueneme, and then I think more coming. I believe Ventura is on its way. So there's a lot of competition. I think, let's see, I know 1, 2, there's at least 2 just within a couple blocks of you.
Correct.
Right. And then I saw one that seemed to be a cannabis-based business right on the corner of Ventura Road and Vineyard. um, nearer to Vallarta. But I don't remember us approving a cannabis business in that particular location.
That was the two athletes,
Two
the
athletes?
two African-American football players that presented to us,
Oh,
Ronnie Jenkins and somebody else. That's their location.
oh, okay. Was it a business we approved?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't remember that location, but so that'd be three, I think, then.
Okay.
Right there within, three other ones right there within a couple blocks of you. So, those difference makers like the UFCW or other project labor agreement are things that some customers will say, okay, well, I got a lot of choices. I got to figure out something. And Oxnard does have a lot of union roots, you know, from United Farm Workers and Cesar Chavez onward.
Yeah.
So something to consider. I think otherwise, I have no other questions. I think homelessness is a great piece to focus on. I work nearby. I work at Child Development Resources,
Across the street.
kind of across the street
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
Ventura Boulevard. We have three buildings there.
Correct.
And there are a lot of people experiencing homelessness that go across that corridor, that go that traverse the Vineyard and River Park area intersection, and then upwards on Vineyard as well. So if you're able to find some ways to support having an impact in ameliorating that situation, then that's going to be a big impact that the community will really notice too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to us, both as contributing members of the community and also from a business perspective, right? To support the homeless population around us and try to reach out to the local services here in Oxnard and try to make those connections. So that will remain an important part of our business and our operation. And in terms of unions, again, just to address, it was a decision we made in Thousand Oaks, and we're figuring out the right way to address it here in Oxnard. We pay living wage in Thousand Oaks, so that's minimum wage and a half. And we've done that, and it's turned out to be a very good business decision for us. It is, as you say, there's some expenses related to it, but it allows us to have very good quality staff who are very happy with their employment with us. So yeah, we will continue with our business sense in that way and really taking care of the people who work for us. And at some point that we'll look at working with UFCW.
Great.
Thank you.
I think, let's see, one other consideration. Thank you. Many of the applicants that were approved beyond the 1%, that's part of the requirement. They did either another 1% or something else to a specific organization that they felt aligned with what they're about. So that might be a consideration that you might do as well. It could be, a little boutonniere on your tux to.
We absolutely would like to. We want to be also thoughtful about not over committing and under delivering. Well, as we walk in, you say we have a lot of competitors nearby.
Sure.
We're very cognizant of it. We're operating in a competitive environment here, and we need to make sure that the business is sustainable and we make that business survive so all the people we employ can continue. And then everything above that, absolutely, we want to look at how we can continue to be generous in the community.
Makes sense. Great. I think that's all my questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No. All right. I'm actually going to start with my lines of questions with our staff. And then I'll call you back up.
Great,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Swanson, just real quick, I did not see in the staff report crime statistics for the area. What is the crime level in this particular area?
The crime is below the citywide average.
Thank you for that. Are we aware of any traffic incidents that seems to be a little higher in this particular area? I know that's unfair to say because you're not the traffic engineer, but
No, but I would say that the congestion at the intersection of River Park is an issue. Having been a prior traffic investigator, I looked at that intersection and I can tell you that I would expect it to be an issue.
Do we expect it being an issue on Vineyard and Olive Street? Since these potential clients are going to be needing to make a U-turn at that location?
Trying to think of what the configuration looks like at all the,
Can I add to that comment actually about the configuration?
give me a moment. I think the natural move for a motorist, at least going northbound, would be to turn left and then left into the driveway off Baldwin. I think that's
Okay.
the most natural move. The U-turn may be prohibited. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I know that when I've gone up there, I haven't U-turned. I've made the other, other maneuver where I made a left turn and entered the driveway.
It's because we live here, so we understand where you can make a U-turn and where you shouldn't.
U-turns are legal unless they're posted.
Yes. I don't recall ever seeing a sign, and I'm just looked on Google Earth and I didn't see a no U-turn. So I was curious about that. Mr. Baez, during the posting of this application, the public notice up until today's meeting, have the city received any comments related to this application?
No, none that I know of.
The public outreach, is it only for residents within the city of Oxnard, or does it cross over into the county of Ventura as well?
The community workshop was mailed out to the residents of the El Rio West neighborhood, but notices were also sent out to all property owners within 300 feet.
Thank you for that. Mr. Vice, one of our applicants in that same vicinity, they had I can't think of the name. It was so that their employees did not actually park on site, that they had to use either public transit or some other means of transportation. Is that something that was implemented by the city, or is that something that the applicant implemented on their own?
That was something the applicant provided on their own voluntarily.
Okay. Thank you to the staff for their work on this, and I'll turn to our applicant team on this. You're well aware of the area. You're well aware that the parking lot is extremely small. Have you thought about asking employees not to drive themselves, but instead to use public transit to get to and from work, or offer some type of subsidy that your company is paying for Ubers or Lyfts or whatever monthly bus passes for them to get to and from work?
We have absolutely been looking for offsite parking for our employees. So we recognize we will have offsite parking for employees. We're in the process of identifying where that will be, but those are great suggestions as alternatives to them of offering public transport reimbursements and or rideshare reimbursements. So thank you. But we will ensure that employees are not parking at that site.
Okay. Prior to today's meeting, did you review any of the other application meetings?
I did, yes.
Okay. In terms of the community involvement, there is a standard and limit that the city puts on you for community engagement. And I believe all of us up here as longtime residents want our applicants for any type of business, cannabis or not, to go above that. Did you or your team go beyond what was expected of you for community engagement of reaching out to the residents in this neighborhood or business owners?
At this stage, we have not. We have absolute plans to do so. I would like to note that for us, this process has been a little bit faster than for other applicants. We were not informed until March that this was going to be an opportunity. So this has been very expedited for us in terms of being able to get things in place and in order to meet this deadline. So that's not an excuse, but to say we have got to the minimum guidelines, but we have full expectations as a business to go above and beyond that. There's much more time for us still from the point of this to getting our building plans approved, getting construction done, getting the store open, that we can be doing this in parallel in terms of outreach and making sure that we're identifying how we will contribute meaningfully to the community.
Okay. And I think I'll turn to your security team on these next couple of questions. Just real quick, you made the comments in regards to slow versus heavy traffic flow into the business will determine on the number of security officers that you have on site.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that there's not really a minimum, correct, Mr.? Yeah, I see it.
That's a business decision.
Okay, thank you for that.
Obviously, one is needed.
Yes, thank you. Other applicants had said that they'll have two, one that's always at the door that also monitors the parking lot, and then one that's, floating around somewhere. Without going into too much detail that will compromise your security plan, what is the process with having two security guards at any given time?
Well, and I'll tell you this because we've done this at their location in TO, worked very closely with them to try to identify exactly how many security guards we need on staff at one time. I will not put my security guards in a situation where they will be in danger or whether the lack of security guards are endangering them. I'm not going to get into that kind of situation. So we make sure that we have enough security guards on staff. And the way that we do that is, number one, obviously we have to have one security guard on duty at all times during operating hours. That security guard generally stays in the lobby area in order to screen visitors that are coming in to identify if they're presenting a threat, if they're highly intoxicated, if they have weapons on them or anything like that. That's a really important role. And then the second security guard generally, and the nice thing about this location and the TO location is that the security guard, there are large picture windows. They can look outside and they can see if there's any kind of an issue, if someone's sitting in their car, if there's any kind of illegal activity or loitering going on outside. When we do have a second security guard, that second security guard would take on those tasks of patrolling the parking lot. They would also be in charge of monitoring incoming shipments as they come, incoming shipments of cannabis as those come onto the property and get checked in. So that's normally the process. And if there's not a lot of traffic, not a lot of clientele coming in, then one security guard can generally handle all of those duties and do it very effectively. And it's a small enough location to where that, it's not like it's a big grow site where, we've got acres or whatever. This is a very small site. So generally, if it's not busy, if there's not high traffic, one security guard can maintain order and security on that site. But we're super sensitive to that. And we've done that at the TO location. If it gets busy, we put a second person in there because it just doesn't make any, it's not a good business decision. Like Scott said, it's not a good business decision to shortcut your security. And we want people to feel safe as well. We want to prevent diversion because that's really important. I personally am really passionate about preventing diversion, having been a police officer. So those are the things that we monitor and we will adjust accordingly. And if there's ever an issue and the city comes to us and says, we think you need more security guards, we absolutely will do that. We won't even hesitate. We will do whatever you guys ask of us. So,
Chair, could you ask him to explain diversion?
Diversion.
Right. Could you?
So diversion is basically anytime that cannabis product gets removed from the legal supply chain. In the state of California, obviously, every plant is tagged and inventoried, and all of that cannabis product all the way throughout the supply chain is constantly monitored and inventoried and put into the state state run inventory system, track and trace. It's called Metric. And this operator, their responsibility does not end to make sure that product doesn't get diverted to people who shouldn't get it, people who are underage or whatever. Their responsibility doesn't end until that customer actually leaves that parking lot with that product. So we're very conscious of the fact that that is a big responsibility. The city of Oxnard is expecting us to prevent children or teenagers, whatever, from getting a hold of this product. So it's important that we do everything that we can to prevent diversion.
Although the operations for this business is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., when is the start and end time that security staff will be on property?
Usually it's 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. If it turns out that, and we don't leave until the last employee leaves, we make sure that they get to their car safely and that everything is locked up and that the security system is fully engaged, because really that's going to be our security after hours.
The security features, such as the cameras, I know one applicant mentioned that they would be able to have like a two-way conversation, that they'll be able to remotely speak to anybody that's around the property off hours. Will
Yes,
your system be able to have
absolutely.
that?
And that is a super effective system. We've seen that work over and over and over again. If they're trying to break in or they're loitering, we just get on the speaker and we say, the police are being notified. Not necessarily, we don't do that immediately, but we tell them the police are being notified. Please move along, and then if there's an issue, then we respond in person.
What is your response time in the event of an off hours? Something's happening at the facility. How fast can one of your guards get to the location?
Well,
Again, I'm not expecting you guys to act like police and, address the situation, but just to be a presence.
sure. So one of the things that we do is if it's a threatening situation, like you said, if we feel that there's a danger, if there's a person with a weapon or a group of people actively breaking in, we generally don't send a security guard to go into that situation, especially by themselves. We generally rely on law enforcement in those types of situations. But if it's a non-volatile type situation, either a security guard or a member of their staff will respond. And we've had pretty good response times so far. I can't give you exact numbers. I will say that Oxnard, we are in the process of developing a plan to service Oxnard because it's a little bit further out than TO. But generally, I would say that we could, between my staff and their staff, we can generally have somebody there just within a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Baez, just real quick, there in our city ordinance for cannabis, there is no buffer zone between cannabis locations, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, those are my questions. Any additional questions? Oh, so we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Mr. Secretary, just to confirm, I did not have anyone sign up for this. We do have someone. So as a reminder to any person that is on the call, if you wish to speak on this item, you can press *9 to raise your hand and you will be recognized. Seeing no movement, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this and bring it back to the commission for any deliberation comments or a motion for this item.
All right, I'm prepared to make a motion.
We'll go to the comments first. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I think I just want to maybe pick up where your line of questioning ended. In terms of the public outreach. I know that's constantly a challenge, for different projects. I think in this situation, it might simply just be, a little bit of this cannabis fatigue, not necessarily, feeling that they've already expressed public comments in some of the other applications or whatnot. And again, just speaking for the higher concentration of permits along that, what is likely shorter than a mile on Vineyard Avenue. Let's see, I think that that point of the concentration itself, lies one level above us with the city council and the original ordinance that they adopted. I would have liked to have seen, and I'm just going to state this for the public record, some sort of consideration of density for applications, especially because our city is so large, the largest in Ventura County, to have oversaturation for me, I think, as we were going through this process, started to just be something that I certainly was sensitive to and concerned about. But like I said, it's something within the original ordinance, nothing that we can, deny you or vote against you for, but nonetheless, something that I wanted to just state for the record. I gave the shout out earlier to that community-based organization, Nyland Acres. There's also El Rio Little League, which would appreciate the shout out and certainly the support. Let's see, as I've said to all the other applicants, your success is really our success, in terms of your revenue, in terms of your contributions to the city. And so I'm prepared to support, and I absolutely wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Any additional comments? I'll just say real quick, obviously we've had a number of applications that's come before us. My concerns has always been for the benefit of our community and the well-being of our community, as myself and a couple of the commissioners are lifelong residents of this city. We grew up here. This is our home. I'm concerned with the oversaturation of this particular area, since there's two other locations, and then just the very next shopping center, there's another location. Vineyard has become Oxnard's very own Green Mile. As Commissioner Dr. Lopez mentioned, it's not in our ordinance to deny somebody just because there's oversaturating a particular neighborhood. Our role is to receive the facts, receive information from both sides, and render a decision based off of that information and not based on feelings. I would encourage you to look out to all the other organizations, nonprofits. I understand that it was a rapid application process, but obviously you lived up to the challenge for it since you are here before us today. I will recommend providing alternative transportation to employees, as this is an area that does get very impacted with traffic in the AM as well as in the PM. And it is expected to get worse when the Starbucks moves into that location at the corner. I would also encourage not removing security staff, but to always keep two on site, whether it's a staggered, where they overlap each other by a few hours, just in order to keep everyone with a peace of mind that protection is all around. As mentioned before, this is not a business that a lot of people are fans of. So not only are you have the challenge to deal with people that are against this type of industry, but it is going to take a lot of effort on your part to remain community members and be invested in this community. This is an area that borders the city of Ventura, the city of Oxnard, the city of Oxnard and the county of Ventura. So there's two communities right there. I wish you nothing but the best of luck and whatever the direction of the vote goes. Any additional comments? Commissioner Nash, you had a motion.
I move the staff recommendation, and if this is successful, I wish you nothing but the best.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
It's been moved and seconded that the planning commission find the project to be categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to section 15301, existing facilities, and approve resolution 2022 XX adopt a resolution 2022 XX approving planning and zoning permit number 21-516-05 special use permit subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there any deliberation on that motion? Seeing and hearing none. Mr. Secretary, can we get a roll call, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Thank you for that and congratulations. So we will proceed to our next item, but we'll pause for a moment to get our vice chair back. And thank you, staff, also. All right, so we'll go ahead and proceed to our next item, which is item G1. This is a returning item. Project name is the City of Oxnard Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, also known as the CAP. I won't read everything. I'll allow Miss Mallory to introduce this since this is all her hard work. So I'll turn it over to our city staff. Miss Mallory, Planning and Sustainability Manager. Miss Mallory.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Commissioner and Commissioners. Excited to be here this evening. First, I just want to make sure we have our team on. I'll just go ahead and we have hopefully they have been granted permission to share their presentation. This is an exciting night for the commission, for the city, for the department. We've worked really hard on this. Thank you for your comments on that. So this evening, the Planning Commission will, Jeff, you can go ahead. Perfect, great. The Planning Commission this evening will consider our draft climate action and adaptation plan. I am Kathleen Mallory. I'm the Planning and Sustainability Manager. And this evening, I'm joined by Jeff Caton, who's the Director of Sustainable Communities for a firm called ESA. I also have Shannon Wages on, Principal Planner with ESA. And then finally, rounding out the team this evening with Brian Schuster with ESA. I also want to acknowledge the hard work of the Public Works Department, who's been supporting with the work effort. And I have Brian Yanis, Steve Howlett and Michael Wolf on the line, and also their awesome facilities gentleman who's Jose, I believe is, and I always say his name wrong, the last name. So he's on as well. And I'm here to support the team as well. So go ahead with the next slide. In the interest of Measure M, I'll just cover the first slide and then I'll round out the end of the presentation. So the purpose of the evening tonight is to review the revisions which were discussed at the July 7th Planning Commission meeting. The report lays out very clearly, we hope, the revisions for which there was consensus from the discussion. And then it also identifies revisions for which there was considerable discussion. We heard what the commission said in a set of, I think, 9 items. Some of them we provided alternative language on, and some we didn't have a recommendation, meaning we would recommend that you not take that action. And this evening we'll also recommend that this is not a public hearing, but to be open to receiving public comment. We've done a lot of social media engagement to let the community know about this. Anyone that submitted a comment received notice of this meeting, and we also had it posted on our website as well. And then the fourth action would be to adopt a resolution recommending council approval of the CAP, as well as the addendum to the program environmental impact report. I will mention that we noted on 2 items. We wanted some fluidity of language for items 2 and 3 in the staff report, but we've actually been able to incorporate some precise language for those 2 items to maybe give the commission a little more comfort on that. So with that, I'm going to proceed to slide 3 and turn the presentation over to Jeff Caton.
Thanks, Kathleen, and good evening, commissioners. It's nice to be with you this evening. I missed the July 7th study session, but I am joined by Shannon Wages and Brian Schuster, who were present at that meeting, and we're all available to.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
The volume raised down, please. Thank you.
So I just briefly wanted to just recap what was discussed at that meeting, and we presented the emissions profile of the city that where
Jeff,
the
I'm sorry. Is there a way that you can move closer? Because you're coming in very low and our
Yeah.
IT team's already saying that we're already maxed out.
Is this better? Can you hear me better?
Keep talking, Jeff.
Can you? Okay, yeah, I'm getting a little. I'm about as close as I can get to the.
That's great. You're much better.
You're
Thank
good.
you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Just to recap, what we did go over at that meeting was we reviewed the greenhouse gas reduction strategies that are present in the plan, and those are under 7 different categories shown here. And there's several what we call strategies, and then implementing actions under each of those strategies. In the 7 categories of clean energy, green buildings, transportation, land use, water conservation and reuse, waste reduction and recycling, and nature-based solutions. Another big part of the CAP are strategies that address 5 major climate change hazards that are expected to become more exacerbated over the next few decades, and that includes extreme heat, extreme drought, smoke and air pollution, sea level rise, and extreme storms and stormwater flooding. And for each of these hazards, the CAP does a forecast of how those hazards are expected to play out throughout the rest of the century. We also present the anticipated specific impacts and vulnerabilities that the city might be facing, and we describe what the city is already doing to address adaptation with regards to these hazards, and then we present strategies for community preparation and for adapting to the hazards. So as Kathleen mentioned tonight, we want to review the 7 items for which there was consensus at the last meeting. We expect these could go pretty quickly, and I'll just walk through them one by one, and we can pause to see if there's any questions about what we're getting at here. And the first one is update the executive summary to describe actions the community can take to advance the city's climate goals. And under this one, we agreed that we would add what the community can do to help section within that executive summary and point to some existing detail that's in chapter 5. There's a table 5.1 in that chapter that outlines what the community can do. I think it's 10 or 12 items. And then we'll make sure that connection is made and that's highlighted in the executive summary. Number 2 is add aspirational language and a sense of urgency within that executive summary and the opening text, and to reduce jargon throughout the plan. We do recognize that the CAP is technical in nature, and we understand the importance of making the language understandable to the layperson. And we do have a terms and abbreviation section up front. And we'll revise language in the executive summary to make it more accessible to the layperson and review the CAP throughout for terms that need explanation or that can be reworded. The third item is refine language in chapter 4 that was saying that Oxnard is not particularly susceptible to actual wildland fires. It was more focused on scope. There was a comment that Oxnard is susceptible to wildland fires along the riverbed, and our suggestion is to remove the statement that while Oxnard is not directly threatened by wildland fires, and that's on page 418, and that would address that comment. Any questions about these 3?
We'll save the questions for after, Jeff, so
Okay.
you can go ahead and proceed with the presentation.
Item 4 was in chapter 4, the comment was emphasize the severity of the state's current drought and water shortage, include rainwater harvesting as a strategy. And we just wanted to acknowledge that rainwater catchment systems are included as an action under the extreme drought strategy ED2 on page 419. And that we can strengthen the strategy ED3, which addresses drought tolerant landscaping, to specify rainwater harvesting specifically as an alternative irrigation, and that we will expand water conservation and reuse strategy W1 to encourage rainwater catchment systems. The 5th consensus revision is related to this comment here that in chapter 4, add climate emergency planning component for residents, include educational support to help form household plans and create support networks. And on that one, the revision is to to under Community Preparedness Strategy CP1, which is focused on public education. That's on page 4.9. That'll be expanded to include these suggestions, such as emergency preparedness fairs and networking events. Number 6, the comment was consider allowing the use of gray water in the city. California Plumbing Code does allow the use of gray water in certain circumstances, and Extreme Drought Strategy ED2 on page 419 currently encourages the use of gray water in rainwater catchment systems. And the staff revision, suggested revision that is a consensus, or that we agreed to, is expand water conservation and reuse strategy W1 to encourage the installation of gray water reuse systems. Item 7 is roll out a plan to implement public electric vehicle charging stations and require EV chargers for handicapped parking spaces. The CAP includes a goal of 1,500 new EV charging stations throughout the community by 2030. EV charging is currently allowed within handicapped parking spaces, and current Title 24 building code does define accessibility accommodations for new or altered public EV stations. Transportation Action T11 on page 321 calls for developing a citywide zero emission vehicle master plan, and that will be augmented to encourage EV systems that are solar infrastructure reliant and be placed at all feasible placement locations. So that concludes the consensus revisions. And now the CAP revisions requiring further discussion. And I guess I would ask Kathleen, would you like to go through these one by one, or should I go through the entire presentation?
Jeff, why don't you go through the entire presentation?
Okay.
Thank you.
The first comment was to exceed the state greenhouse gas emission reduction target of 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. The commission comment was to increase the reduction target to 60% below 1990 levels by 2030 and reallocate funding as needed to achieve this target. Under staff recommendations, staff recommends retaining target as 40% below 1990 levels, as increasing the target would require extensive technical and policy work and would delay CAP adoption. It's staff recommendation to revise page 210, and that's the chapter on greenhouse gas emissions in the city and the city's target. Revised page 210 with the city's CAP has an aspirational goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045, and will revisit the feasibility of that goal during the next CAP update, which, by the way, would happen within the next 5 years. And after the California Air Resources Board has adopted its next scoping plan update, and that scoping plan is in draft form and is expected to be adopted by the end of the year. Number 2 is require project labor agreements, PLAs, as a way to reduce vehicle miles traveled. The commission comment was to revise land use strategy L1, which addresses transit-oriented and mixed-use development, on page 330, to describe PLAs as a way to reduce VMT and consider requiring them on development projects as a way to reduce VMT. Staff recommendation is to forego a requirement to include PLAs on projects, given that sustainable VMT reduction is largely driven by land use policy, transit, and bike and pedestrian opportunities. And a reduction in commuter trips and PLAs would be relatively small and short-lived. And then the staff suggest adding an opening sentence to land use strategy L1, which is on page 330, that would say the city acknowledges the relationship between vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, and land use policy. Transit-oriented and mixed-use development will help reduce VMT associated with commuting and everyday transportation needs. Item number 3 is include recommendation that the city's fiscal budget allocate $1 million annually to implement the CAP. The commission comment was implementation steps on pages 5.5 and 5.6 should be revised to recommend the city's fiscal year budget allocate $1 million annually to implement the CAP's near-term actions. Staff recommends avoiding including a specific dollar figure since costs are not known at this time and state and federal funding is increasing. In addition, budgeting is the purview of council. Specific language suggested would be to page 5.6 under the secure funding bullet. And that would open with the city will consider the cap in yearly departmental budgeting and CIP activities and seek out federal and state funding opportunities where funding aligns with council priorities and the cap programs. Item number 4, 80% to 100% renewable energy should be required on city project sites for which lease agreements are being secured. The commission comment was specifically the Clean Energy Action E 1.5 on page 3.9 should be revised to add this requirement. Staff recommends that alternative language not be provided. The city currently procures energy from CPA at the 100% renewable level, except for enterprise accounts, which have their own requirements. And then for accounts served by SCE, which is Southern California Edison, the renewables level will gradually increase pursuant to state law. In other words, SB 100 and the RPS. And just, I think it was yesterday, the legislation passed SB 1020. The state is now targeting 90% renewables statewide by 2035 and 95% by 2040, in addition to the law that already exists to achieve 100% renewables by 2045. Item 5, under Green Building Strategy B2, which addresses electrification of buildings, require solar panels and battery storage on new development over a certain size, such as multifamily buildings. The commission comment was battery storage should be required for single family and multifamily housing construction beginning January 2024. Staff is not recommending alternative language as is starting in January 2023. The state building code as updated will require new single family and multifamily homes and many non-residential buildings to have a solar PV system and a battery storage system. So that's requirement is coming January 2023. Number 6, under Green Building Strategy B2, also, which is again, electrification of buildings, accelerate the requirement for new building electrification through the adoption of REACH codes that ban natural gas now instead of relying on the state building code. The commission comment is implementing actions under strategy B2 on page 317 should be revised to require that effective January 2023, the city ban the allowance of natural gas in new construction. Similar to the last one, staff is not providing alternative language, but the reasons are that natural gas is still needed to provide critical energy resilience, at least in the near term, and that starting January 2023, state building code will require electric-ready new homes, and therefore, or thereafter, will have increasingly progressive electrification requirements for all new buildings. And number 7, this is the 7th out of 7. 7th, program or policy should be included in the cap to transition existing buildings away from gas to all electric infrastructure. The commission comment was implementing actions under Green Building Strategy B2 on page 317 should be revised to ban the allowance of natural gas in existing buildings. Staff is not providing alternative language for this one as well. Natural gas, similarly, is still needed to provide critical energy resilience. The process of converting an existing building from gas to electric is complex and expensive, and that strategy B2 currently does include actions B21, B22, and B23 that support electrification of existing buildings. And then one last slide on the CEQA document for the cap, noting that the cap is an implementing action of the 2030 general plan. The city has prepared an addendum affirming that the analysis in the general plan program EIR adequately addresses potential environmental impacts associated with the implementation of the cap, and that the cap is considered a qualified greenhouse gas reduction plan consistent with CEQA guidelines, and as such can be used to facilitate CEQA clearance of the city's future development project. projects with respect to greenhouse gas emissions. And I wanted to note that a qualified cap is proving to be very effective and the most legally defensible way to plan for growth that does not create a significant impact with respect to greenhouse gas emissions. And with that, I'll pass it back to Kathleen.
Thank you, Jeff. So our final slide is the recommendation slide, which is to receive public comments on the draft cap this evening. And we're recommending that you approve the resolution recommending City Council adoption of the cap and the addendum to the program EIR with the modifications as mentioned to the item 2 and 3. One item just to note is that we have that language on the slides. It's slide 10 and 11, and it's language that is in green. And we'd be happy to put that up as we go through the discussion if that would be helpful. I also wanted to mention that I have Jeff Pengelly, the Assistant Community Development Director and the building official on the line as well, should you have any questions within his wheelhouse. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and we're open and available here to answer questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Mallory, and thank you to the team. A lot of hard work in this. So we'll turn it to the commission if they have any questions for staff on this item. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Just a couple of observations, and maybe staff or Jeff could clarify for me. When we state that we want 1,500 new EV chargers by 2030, just some quick napkin math indicates that's a new charger every 1.5 days or so. But I'm not seeing the program to implement that. So how do we rectify the number with the plan to actually build the things?
Thank you.
Okay.
We have a lot of fun because Jeff can't see me and I can't see him. So, so let's also just clarify Jeff Pengelly versus Caton. Jeff Caton, I'll go ahead and just jump in. So we've been working on the issue of Eevee quite a lot. And I'll provide some comments, Jeff Caton, and if you want to add anything, no worries. One of the first actions we need is an Eevee master plan. That's one of the very first actions recommended. We've been working with the VCREA, and we've also been monitoring there's a blueprint for Ventura County for Eevee, and we've been working with the Eevee coach through the VCREA group. So we recognize that that's an aggressive number. I'd like Jeff's input in terms of any GHG reduction components. But one of the first things we want to have done is, and we're going to be seeking and making a recommendation to council on that, is that the Eevee master plan. Jeff?
Yeah, I'll start, and I have Brian here that might be able to help dig into the weeds if we need to, but that 1,500 is based on the science and the policy that is expected to be needed to be put in place, or it drives the need for the number of stations that it will be needed to support the electric vehicle population throughout the state. We base that on what the state is saying is needed, but we actually cut it back quite a bit on a per capita basis. If you look at the population of California, there's some X number of charging stations that the state believes need to be put in place to support the number of electric vehicles that we need to have on the road by 2030 for the state to meet its target. So we took that, we started with that, and we cut it about in half. It was saying something more like 2,500, 3,000 stations would be needed to support Oxnard's population. But we assume that Oxnard's population is not going to transition to electric vehicles as fast or at the same rate as the state on average. And so what we also need is we need a minimum amount of electrification of transportation at the community level to meet the target. In order to meet the target that is in the cap right now, which is 40%. And as you may remember, transportation represents a very large percentage of overall emissions in the community. And we're doing just about everything we can to get the emissions down from building electricity, for one thing. We're still left with a big challenge in transportation. And so this is just an area that was sort of like the elephant in the room. We have to address it. And there's a lot of momentum with electrification right now in transportation, and a lot of funding that's coming down the pike. So we recognize it's an ambitious target when you put it in a per day kind of metric, but we do think it's achievable.
See, this is, I think, one of the justifications for our asking for a set aside, whether it's $1 million or whatever. One of our former department heads, Dan Rydberg, had a saying that he learned in the military that vision without funding is insanity. So, that's kind of what my feeling is on this. We have a vision, but we don't have any way to implement it currently. And I do hope that we find a way to solve that problem. A lot of things have changed since we last, since our first hearing on this. One of those being the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act that will really spur EV ownership. So once again, we're kind of looking at a plan that that is maybe behind the times a little bit. I do believe that EV ownership, trying to put this in the form of a question, but how do we, is there any way that we can include the IRA provisions for funding EVs into this climate action and adaptation plan?
Commissioner, and Jeff Caton, I'll jump in. Your question, Commissioner Nash, is incredibly timely. Let me tell you a few reasons why. One is because we participated in a it's fading here. California Energy Commission workshop just yesterday at the PAC. We were excited to host it here, and we heard about all the money that is coming, which we're aware of, the Inflation Reduction Act, along with the state money, substantial to the SCAG region. We also were asked to speak on the panel and give recommendations directly to the Energy Commission and the PUC. And one of the things we recommended was the funding directly for EV. And those recommendations were presented today to the California Energy Commission, and it's posted on YouTube. We also had a few other members of the community presenting on that. There's significant momentum for energy. It's the connection between housing, land use, energy, sustainability, water. It's an exciting time with all of this. So I think, and that's one of the reasons why on the budgeting piece that you raised, we suggested that language mentioning federal and state. We are monitoring very closely that Inflation Reduction Act 8-page document from the Biden administration that lays out the money, leads out how the money will be distributed. And we are directly sitting at the table suggesting how that be rolled out. So I think the language that we're suggesting does, in my professional opinion, and we're happy to discuss further with you on that, but I believe it does address your concern because we mentioned federal, we mentioned state, but the money is so significant coming forward. We really do not recommend specifying a dollar amount, as well as the budgeting issues are within the purview of the council.
Thank you for that. Is there a way that we can spur the city council to transition the enterprise accounts to move to 100% renewable energy as quickly as possible? I know that there's a significant cost involved, but I also think that that's a sort of low-hanging fruit to achieve some of our GHG reductions.
Commissioner Nash, I have some comments, but also I know we have Michael Wolf on the line. So I'll provide a couple comments, and then Michael, if there's anything you wanted to add on that. The CAP does have recommendations for municipal buildings and doing an assessment. We can't just put renewables on a number of our buildings right now. There's delayed and deferred maintenance that needs to occur. We are actively discussing the options for solar carports. So we've been having that, just to give one example, we've been having a lot of those conversations. To transition them to renewable energy, the first step would be to deal with deferred maintenance, and that's where council's budget has been. But the CAP does recommend moving when we do building, like for example, a roof repair, to do the assessment for putting solar on with it simultaneously. So we try to think of it smart planning. Michael, do you have anything you'd like to add?
If I could clarify my comment, it was my impression that the enterprise accounts are like water, wastewater, and solid waste.
Yes,
Okay, so we're, okay.
but those are facilities as well. So when I gave the example of like Pacific Avenue and the trucks there are certain, or the AWPF, those are enterprise buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, did you want to add anything?
Before I start too far, is my audio okay?
Yes.
So the only thing I would add is, as mentioned, there's obviously a cost component to potentially changing some of the enterprise funds to this different source. And that really starts to tear into a conversation about rates. So as you know, we have to go through a Prop 218 process for rates. So potentially we would be, if we make a mandate or a directive to increase the cost, we have to understand is that how that affects, and should it happen before or after we start looking at rates. So that's the only thing I would add to that comment.
Okay, thank you. And
The library is closing in 30 minutes. If you need a library card, please apply for one now. La biblioteca cerrará en media hora. Si necesita una tarjeta de membresía, por favor, regístrese ahora mismo.
Good job to the
Thank you
city
for that
for
public
that.
announcement. One final point I want to make is that when we talk about decarbonizing buildings, that we're not operating in a vacuum. REACH codes are being adopted and implemented throughout California. And I wish Oxnard could be one also. So that's not really a question, just a comment. Thank you, Chair Chavez. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. If I could please go back to slide 10, and then it's later going to be 11. And then, oh, we're there already. So I think this is, yes, in regards to number 2. I forgot what the conversation was 2 months ago, just specifically in regards to PLA and VMTs, the full one of the commission. But there are other benefits just other than VMT for that number. I think it's come up time and time again that PLAs are wanted or requested or recommended for various projects. And this is another leg for at least in the future that the Planning Commission and or the City Council can substantiate why there's a need for a PLA. So I just put that out there. And if I could go to slide 11, please. In regards to a specific dollar amount, I do appreciate that there is some type of minimum recommendation in regards to the phrase yearly department budgeting. I do hope that this city is going to take that into account, or there's some separate section when they're having budget discussions in the committee in regards to the CAP plan. I am going to emphasize my fellow Commissioner Nash and in regards to his comment that, you know, usually priorities are nice, but they usually don't get implemented without funding. I gave my example on the city I used to work for. There's a policy that wanted to be implemented for more than 5 years, and until money was actually implemented for it or put towards the budget, it was actually done. So I do appreciate that at this time, it's probably premature to put a specific dollar amount. I wish and I hope that we could get in 1 to 2 years to start putting actual percentage or dollar amounts. I do like in the last 2 months, there's been a lot of action in the state and the federal to actually get monies there. So I hope that the Planning Commission can look at some type of revision or head start in planning for the next cap in 5 years in the next 2 to 4 years. And so that's a wish. And so I'll leave it at that for the moment. And if I could just combine 6 and 7, in regards to banning natural gas, I have to agree with Commissioner Nash that I wish Oxnard would be one of those rich cities. Cities like San Jose and Los Angeles have already done this, big cities, substantial cities, and they have enough exceptions in their codes that these cities are, that the public is going to be able to remove themselves from it if needed, but it sets not just in pursuit of lowering GHGs, but in terms of just health and safety in regards to if there's hookups for the houses. And so one of the easier ways, instead of number 7, which is, my opinion, probably a little bit extreme. Obviously, if we had unlimited money, we would transfer everything into electricity. But for 6, I think an easy way would be to ban it in new construction. Maybe 2023 is a little bit too early. And so I think a recommendation could be to have it sometime in the 2025 to 27 timeline. And so other than GHG, there are other non-cap reasons why that should be done. I want to say first that thank you, Ms. Mallory and your staff for sifting through the Planning Commission's deliberations and synthesizing, because there were a lot of tangents during that conversation and deliberations, and even right now when I'm talking. And so I appreciate that everything was clearly laid out and point-wise, and your explanations on why staff didn't go at least in the direction that some of us wanted. But I mean, at this time, I do agree with what staff has here, but I wouldn't be opposed to any recommendation in regards to making numbers 2 implemented, or making 3, 6, or 7 in some ways a little bit more robust than what staff recommends at this time. That's all my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any additional? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Thank my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Nash and Vice Chair Rejo. Your questions are very much appreciated and certainly more pointed and specific than I was prepared to present today, but nonetheless, very much appreciate your points that you brought up. I also just have to add my voice to number 3 with the budget allocation. And although I appreciate the momentum that's been expressed both from the federal and state government, I think that nonetheless, the city making its own commitment as a minimum, and the language could then, go off of that minimum commitment to certainly and aggressively try to secure some of the state and federal monies that are in the pipeline, and that may be further down the pipeline in 5 to 10 years. And so that's what I wanted to add to that. I think as my previous commissioners have shared, this is aspirational. It is about our values and it is about our goals. But I think, as we all know, and certainly as department heads and anyone who manages a program at the city, you don't have to tell us what your priorities are. We see it reflected in the budget, right? And so again, just putting it as a minimum commitment or contribution of the city, because this is something that is important to all of us, certainly with the risk, the threat, and future sea level rise as a coastal community. Again, just looking at it a more of a minimum rather than a ceiling on the contribution. And again, just one part of the contribution, if you will, from this city, its residents, its taxpayers, and its leadership towards moving us towards our targets. But nonetheless, I certainly, and I don't know, are we going to do remarks or should we mention them now?
We're only doing
Questions?
questions.
Okay, perfect. But thank you.
Any additional questions? Ms. Mallory, I do have a few questions. And it was mentioned in regards to item number 3 in Exhibit A, where it's talking about setting a certain dollar amount. The money that's being proposed from the federal and the state, is there any language in there that says cities or communities have to have matching funds?
Chair Chavez, the details of that federal budget package has not been rolled out at all. So it does not say anything about that.
Okay. I only say that just because on this item, and I shared those comments last time, that I side with staff on their recommendation. And I'll stop there. Number 2, in regards to requiring the PLAs as a way to reduce the vehicle miles traveled, the VMTs. My concerns with this is that we are saying that electric vehicles charging stations is going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're saying that it's going to, that it's the easy fix, that it's a fast fix. Am I understanding that correctly based off of the presentation, that it's the one that's easily attainable?
Commissioner or Chair, I'm just checking. Are you talking about the number 2 in the Exhibit A reference to PLAs as a way to reduce VMT?
Yeah, I might be merging
No,
a
that,
couple
I mean,
of them
that
together.
VMT is a very, very complex issue, certainly. And we'll be bringing a study session to commission later this year, as I mentioned, but VMT is, and Jeff, feel free to add anything if you'd like, or Shannon. But VMT is informed by land use patterns, by land uses, by commuting patterns, and by environmental conditions as well. So.
And I appreciate that. I guess ultimately, based off of the presentation, what I heard is that it's the charging stations as a low hanging fruit to what we already are aware of, that transportation is that large piece of the pie. And I understand that the comments for the PLAs was to a way of trying to keep vehicles off the road to try to reduce that. But it's being recommended not to put that type of language, and that we focus more on land use policies that incorporate more public transit. My only concern is that that's not enough for me, of just saying we need to plan better, or that we need charging stations, because there's still going to be those vehicles on the road. So I guess ultimately what I'm looking for is what is our next steps to try to really tackle it, because it's nice to just say, well, we need to work on land use policies and transit oriented development, but what exactly are we doing to try to address this? And again, nobody has a crystal ball. The county's trying to tackle this also with their climate emergency council. But I just wanted, I want more substance versus just words.
So, Chair Chavez, if I'm understanding your question, there's a few there, but one that I heard resonating was, what are the steps to address VMT? So that is one of my favorite topics right now. So one of the things is to look at, we mentioned land use policies. We'll be kicking off our 2050 Oxnard General Plan update. So a comprehensive look at land use patterns. The other is creating our own VMT thresholds, which we're working on right now through an update to our California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. looking at the model, the traffic model in the county and determine the vehicle traffic model in the county and deciding what is the best model for us to be looking at emissions and ways to get cars off the road. Certainly EV is one component. And there's the other issue is the great work that the transportation department's doing with our mobility fee and looking at ways to do adaptive mitigation, adaptive VMT mitigation. We're collaborating with the county and various cities to look at how we should create programs to tie to mobility. Another way is the issue of pedestrian and bike safety, which is very real, and looking at how to integrate changes in land in roadway networks and different modes of transportation. Another way is the issue of our housing element, and we're developing a study, a high quality transit corridor study, to look at ways what we can place the housing near changes in transit routes, which I know you have a keen interest in. So one of the things that's really neat about Oxnard, one of the reasons I love what I do here, is because we're doing all of that. And, you know, other cities are sort of struggling with, okay, how are we going to do this? But the leadership here, the council's direction, the community development department is, we're doing this. And so all these are incremental steps to really look at how to make it better with VMT. One action is not going to do it. It's the integrated approach, which is exciting, challenging, but also allows for a lot of creativity.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. You know, essentially what and this is more of a Carmen Ramirez saying, is trying to do away with our dependency. You know, I never knew our library did that, but that's pretty impressive. Of not being so card dependent. And I believe we've gotten to a point where we believe cars is the only way to get around. And not only because I came from public transit, that I believe public transit can be beneficial. So I'm curious as to how is our city in development of our CAP plan, working with the County Transportation Commission as they are doing their ties study, in looking at which is the best model for public transit in Ventura County. Is it a single transit agency? Is it 2 transit agencies? Is it 3 transit agencies versus what we have now, that we have essentially, I think 9 or 11 transit agencies that are operating independently of each other. So have those any discussions or looked into those types of things as to maybe planning for the future?
Well, Chair, we haven't had direct conversations with VCTC or Gold Coast Transit as to, you know, which agency should be merged or any of that. But what I can say is we are active participants at the table when they talk about plan updates and studies and transit routes. And we do participate in those monthly and quarterly meetings. And we are in very close communication with the leadership at VCTC and Gold Coast Transit. So they bring us in when those important decisions need to be discussed that are relevant to Oxnard.
Awesome for that. The last question that I had, it was mentioned that we have to have an EV master plan for our charging stations. I'm only curious as to why, or maybe there's just 2 questions. One, are we already in the process of developing that plan? And if we're not, what are we waiting for?
So Chair Chavez, in terms of the EV master plan, we have been actively working with VCREA to try to get the funding for that. It's not just doing a plan for where you place it. It is looking at existing lines of where and how that would work with you. I'm just going to call it utility line upgrades, what the appropriate type of charging station is. looking at where you can place it that's not going to impact private properties, or creating a program that allows for private installation for public use. So we are looking at it. We really, really worked hard to take advantage of the two Eevee programs right now, Cal EVIP and Power, the Edison program. It's failing me right now. Forgot it. It's my notes. But there are two programs that were great, but it didn't provide for 100% funding, and we did not have an infrastructure funding to run the lines from an existing building over to the location. So right now we have an Eevee plan that we keep internal, and we are giving input to the county when they come to us and ask about where to put it. The plan, if I could guess, is to develop it would be, I don't know, 400,000, 500,000. It's not just to place it here. It has a lot more detail. We are also, and this is one of the things I spoke to the Energy Commission about yesterday, is giving money for those master plans, like outright. Here you go. Here's your $500,000. The other thing that we're looking at with that is we tried to develop, we asked for the California Energy Commission to do a piggyback agreement, one sole service contract, or do it by regions, and then we could jump on their piggyback contracts. We tried very hard over the past year to do that. The County of Ventura didn't have it. Thousand Oaks didn't have a piggyback clause. I think Ventura did, but they weren't interested in having us jump on. You think these are the things that people don't necessarily think about, but you have to have contractually the right mechanism in place so that when the money comes, you can jump on it. For example, the Cal EVIP money became available July 1, and the money that cities really would want to use was gone within like 3 minutes. You have to submit not only the location, but all the details, wattage, the whole plan for how you're going to do this. So we've done a lot of work with that, but we have to develop our own plan that really tailors to our community, what we're looking for locally.
I appreciate that. Thank you for all that information. I lied. There is one more that I have a question on. The city buildings, it's talked about that as we begin to do more maintenance repairs, address those deferred maintenances, that we are looking at electrification. Is there a set standard in the CAP plan that says how much of our buildings, our city-owned buildings, are to be either 100% electrification or 80%? And then on top of that, any buildings that we lease for city use, are we setting a standard as to saying we will only do business with certain property owners that has this X number percentage of electrification? I know that's a lot to dissect, and I apologize.
Commissioner, Chair Chavez, I'm going to hit number 2 and give Mr. Wolf some time to think about the question of a percentage of, actually, no, let me hit number 1. The CAP does not right now say a percentage of buildings that should be 100% using 100% green energy, that solar PV, battery storage, or combination. The second item that you talked about was when we lease properties, is there a standard for how much renewable energy has to be either on the site or provided? The CAP doesn't say if it's a lease building that you have to have 100% renewable on site. However, I will tell you that our Clean Power Alliance, have already 96% of our community is procuring 100% clean energy here. So by inference, and we provide energy to our buildings and our population through the Clean Power Alliance, and 96% of our residents are securing and procuring 100% green power. So in the instance of a property that is being leased by the city, that person, unless they opt out or opt down, they are getting energy to their building that they would be leasing from the city at the 100% green level.
And maybe I didn't explain it correctly on my side. I'm looking more as to the electrification, not necessarily what energy is being delivered to us, but more of the electrification that the building is able to produce through solar panels, battery storage. I don't know, maybe that's
In other
too
words, you mean so there's no natural gas required in that building or minimizing that use of natural
correct.
gas?
No natural gas, just something that's full electrification. So again, maybe that's too much, like trying to dig too deep into it, or, too much in this late hour, but I'm just curious about that.
Jeff Caden, or I see Michael, you've unmuted. Michael, did you want to say some comments? And then Jeff Caden, if you'd like to say anything. And I also have Jeff Pengelly online too. So Michael, do you want to say something?
I did not. I don't think I unmuted, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Caden?
No, I'll just say that we had those types of discussions in the development of the plan, and there did not seem to be a support for making that kind of requirement on city buildings at this point. So there is no specific target set right now for electrification of city buildings.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair. I guess one question around the EV infrastructure piece is, well, I guess a lot of it's going to really depend on that master plan, I suppose, because we've got kind of principles and here's, what we're told we need and here's what we're planning for. But in terms of thinking through how that would actually look, we really can't speak to that at this point. Would that be accurate?
Commissioner Meyer, I mean, I've looked at a number of
The
master plan.
library is closing in 5 minutes. Please check out all items now. La biblioteca cerrará en 5 minutos. Por favor, pase a registrar sus materiales.
5 minutes to talk
Yeah, so go ahead.
until the zero.
So just to be, when you say that it's hard to identify what it would look like, I mean, that's there, we know generally some locations we'd want community input on it. We've, as we think of the locations, or we hear about someone that's putting it in, or we collaborate, with another agency, we drop the pin on our internal map. So when you say what it looks like, I mean, we have general ideas on location. I have from just a little work that I've done. I know roughly that dollar amount. I could be wrong on that, but are there more specifics you're thinking of when you say what it would look like?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, being an EV owner, having the experience of it, one is a huge difference is if you do happen to be able to own a home, then you can charge at home, which, is just not an option for gas powered cars. And so it changes your whole mindset. Typically that means that you won't need to fuel your car unless you're doing some extended travel of some sort. So it changes where is charging needed. It's not like, oh, we'll just transition all the gas, all our service stations, our gas stations to electric. It's like, well, the need isn't quite the same. But then I also think about, we have to look at what is available to different communities. It seems like it's something that would start with more single family homeowners and people that have more affluence because the cars are more expensive in the first place. And then there would be kind of a vision of reaching out to communities where there's less adoption yet, less ability to adopt. And then looking further in, okay, what do all these gas stations then start to transition to as the need is reduced? And there's just a lot to think about over decades of time. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves, but we know that the mandate is here. 2035, no more gas powered cars sold in the state.
Right.
So I guess we don't have to think through all the detail of that at this point, but is that really what the master plan will be for?
Well, that's a great question. The master plan is going to be, where can we put it with consideration to need types and existing infrastructure, and then where infrastructure upgrades need to go. So it truly is a master plan for making it happen. What you raised is such an interesting issue, as a policy issue that we raised yesterday with the Energy Commission, and then to your comment on the gas stations, yes, it's a land use issue, right? Where we start looking at how your community has those stations, what makes sense. In some ways, you're reading the market, and that's a little challenging. But in terms of the issue like charging stations and trying to make it accessible for a lower income area or a lower income or a multifamily project or a property owner, what's the incentive there for that, right? So that was part of the policy consideration that we thought through and talked through and made recommendations on to the Energy Commission. So those are things that we're thinking of, but it goes in, it's a conversation that's very much worth having. That is something that we think of and what we do, but it's also layering it with state and federal policy documents and policy approaches, because alone we can't offer, the 40,000 to put it in for a 10 unit building, right? If we could, I guess, if that's a choice that didn't go to something else in the city, but we are making those recommendations to the state and the federal government. I hope those comments help in some way to make you know that we are for sure thinking of them, and we have an interest in that as well.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And I can appreciate the complexity of the task at hand when we're considering a vision of where our city is going in terms of how we move around, in terms of where we live in relation to the places that we go. Envisioning, okay, 10 years from now, we envision, a different proportion of electric vehicles to gas powered vehicles. And great. And then we're envisioning with mass transit, how much transition are they going to be able to make to renewable sources for their vehicles? And then looking another decade and another decade. And also at the piece of, are we really encouraging walking, biking, and providing infrastructure for those to hopefully reduce the need for cars, period. So there's a lot of moving parts in the whole piece. And so I think, that kind of work, when we get into the nuts and bolts of how it will look and assessing the landscape right now, so we don't get ahead of ourselves and build infrastructure for something that's no longer necessary. There's a lot to it. And so is that really what the task will be of that Eevee? Because you talk about the Eevee infrastructure master plan, but it has to have predictors in place of, with all those changes in place, how much really will we need and where will it really be? Because it seems to take a year or years for Eevee infrastructure to be implemented. The stations at the collection that recently, I think the plastic finally came off of them, but it's been, I think, at least a year, maybe more, that they've been sitting there, I guess, waiting for perhaps all the regulatory pieces to finally come into place and then get approval to start. So yeah, it just, as I'm looking at it, it's like have the timing and to request funding that allows for the timing to make wise decisions and not to make rush decisions because the money is going to go away is quite a task.
Yes.
So yeah, I just acknowledge the enormity of the task and the importance of the task. And there's a lot to be excited about, but it's also, a task that requires a tremendous amount of consideration and thoughtfulness, data, wisdom. So
Yes, absolutely agreed to all that.
That's really the comments I wanted to make, and maybe also to have it on record for people to think about. it's not as simple as just shifting infrastructure, we're trying to do something much more than, oh, well, let's just have the same number of cars, but now they're electric. We want to shift the whole way we move around.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's go ahead and open the public hearing for this, or not public hearing, but public comments for this item. And I thought I saw a hand raised. Okay, so the phone number ending in 6070. You can go ahead and unmute yourself by pressing *6. Can you request it again? Okay, so we'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission if that's okay. Oh,
Hello?
yes.
Hi,
Hi.
good evening. My name is John Allman. I am the director of the Santa Barbara Ventura chapter of the Sierra Club. I'm speaking on behalf of our members in Oxnard tonight. We wanted to give you our support for going forward with the cap, but as somebody mentioned, circumstances are changing extremely rapidly, and don't know whether this plan will be sufficient in order to align with what's happening in terms of the momentum on electric vehicles, building electrification, and the money that's being poured in now to California and anybody who wants it to beef up that infrastructure and promote clean cars. It's going to be good for the city, and I see a lot of construction now. None of it is all electric, unfortunately. If you know of an all electric building, please let me know. But it's sad because the county of Ventura is most likely going to go to all electric this year for buildings. So you would want to keep up. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that as far as EVs, in these buildings, the people who are buying them, or buying or renting, they want to have electric vehicles, but they want to be able to charge at night. And currently, California only allows 10%, only requires 10% of the in-building charging spots to be electric. But I think you're going to need more. I think you really underestimate how quickly Oxnard is going to convert to electric vehicles. There is no reason to believe that Oxnard is going to be behind the rest of the state, as I heard said, on electric vehicles. When the electric vehicle, first of all, the electric vehicles now are mostly expensive. There are a few moderate models, but as soon as this production line starts going, you are going to see so many cars on the market and so many used vehicles that are electric, and people want them. It's going to change rapidly. And I just don't think that you can make that assertion, or you should. I think the people of Oxnard are going to embrace them, but they want to make sure that their government is giving them the means to do it. And they don't want to charge, spend their money at a charge station if they can charge at home overnight, which is their natural need. But going on long trips, or when you need some in a pinch, or if you don't have a landlord who will give you access to electric vehicle charging, yes, you do need that quick charge wherever. But at the end of the day, you charge
Thank you,
where you
sir.
sleep. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. If there's any additional members on the call that wishes to speak, you may use the raise hand feature if you're on the desktop Zoom app, or you can press *9 to raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Ms. Mallory, if you would like to wrap up your comments, and then we'll bring it back to the commission.
We're happy to answer any questions. We appreciate members of the community adding comments. We are not aware of that 10%. It's not straight across the board. It's a sliding scale dependent upon the number of parking spaces. And I'm sure if you wanted to ask more questions or you wanted a more detailed explanation, Mr. Pengelly could provide that. And we do agree that we're going to see a lot of Eevee interest. We have already. And we're ready to get going on that master plan. And we want to do it as well. That's all on my end. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll bring it back to the commission for any additional questions or deliberative comments or a motion. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I'll kind of just go ahead and get started with just general comments. Despite all of our comments, questions, and concerns, I certainly want to acknowledge the extraordinary planning staff, public works, and Ms. Mallory, your entire team, who has contributed to putting this report together in this latest with the latest revisions. I thought it was certainly thorough, targeted, appreciated the aspirational language in there, comprehensive, impressive, science-based, and more importantly, I think it is a plan for us to, one, do something in a coordinated way, and two, to meet our larger targets. I made my sentiments about the minimum annual contribution that I believe that the city should still do, so that we are able to do something or enhance anything that we may be able to do as a result of state and federal funding. But I also very much appreciated the creative way that it included the PLAs as a means to reduce vehicle mileage traveled, et cetera. And so again, just wanted to acknowledge, Ms. Mallory, your extraordinary work in leading this plan forward for all of us. Thank you.
Any additional deliberations? Commissioner Nash.
Oh, thank you, Chair Chavez. First, I want to give a big thanks to Kathleen and her staff and our partners over at ESA. In reading this document, I was impressed with the level of detail. It is perhaps not the climate action plan that I would write. What I'm afraid of is in 5 years, we will look back on this and things are changing so fast that we'll wonder why we didn't do some of the things we talked about tonight, and maybe a whole lot more. It's difficult to foretell the future. I'm very aware of that. But this is such an existential problem that I don't think that we can literally do too much to make our community resilient, sustainable, safe, and at the end of the day, it has to be carbon free. So I am happy to support a motion to approve the adoption of the climate action and adaptation plan with the addendum. So thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Kathleen, and the folks at ESA.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair. So I accidentally said a lot of my deliberative comments in the previous section, but I'd like to wrap up that if you know, this is the first cap, if I'm not mistaken, and I am impressed with how in-depth and all the policies that could contribute to it. I'm always just thinking about greenhouse gases. Those are like the main top of line for me. So I appreciate all the different policies, state, local, state, and federal that go into ensuring that we meet our cap goals. There were a lot of comments, I believe, from the Planning Commission and from staff that there are a lot of actions on both the state and the federal level, and likely on the county, it seems like that will be implemented or rolled out in the next 2 years. And so I'm letting the commission know that I am planning to propose an amendment that we review the progress of this cap. I'm going to put out in 2 years. So if and when that motion is made, I plan to propose that amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any additional deliberation comments?
Mr. Chair, we do need a second before we have a motion on the floor, I believe. So we would need to have a second before we have discussions.
Oh, was that a motion?
I believe so. Commissioner Nash,
I did not make a motion. I was letting someone else do that.
my apologies.
I
It
think
appeared to be, but
I think my wording was I would be willing to support a motion, so that, I'm sorry if that was construed as actually making the motion.
Okay,
that's fine.
okay,
He has clarified.
okay. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I think what's important for me is one to appreciate all of the hard work that went into this, and to appreciate your leadership, Ms. Mallory, on making this happen. I know it's a gargantuan task, and it's just the beginning of, you know, much more planning and implementation work that just is multiplicative, there we go, in terms of what it takes to go from, you know, even this thorough document to actual implementation, and seeing it through and adjusting to changing circumstances. So I appreciate that. I do have a question in regard to, and I don't know if this is the point yet, to reference the vice chair's interested in an amendment for an update. Do I need to wait until we have like an amendment motion in a second before we deliberate on that, or?
Well, at this point in time, given that there is not a motion on the floor, because Commissioner Nash has indicated he did not intend to make one, any motion which is made could propose an amendment to staff's recommendation if that is the commission's desire.
Okay. I guess, so my point would be maybe a point of concern around the amount of work it takes to provide an update at a given time, because that would mean gathering data, analyzing it, putting it into a digestible format for us at a certain point in time. And if it's and just the sense of what that would basically cost to make that happen at a time that's outside of the planned updates that you already have.
Thank you. Did you want to respond?
Chair and Commissioner, so the question was in response to Vice Chair Arejo's comment about reviewing the progress of the cap in 2 years, and the question of what amount of work effort and or cost would be associated with that effort. Did I get that right? I don't know the cost for that. I can assure you there is a work effort with it. And certainly there are ways that you can monitor reductions in GHG through common websites and inventory documents throughout Ventura County, but I don't really have an answer for a cost. But it definitely would be staff time for sure. But it also is also something that we would want to, and I kind of putting my foot in my mouth. I'm looking at Mr. Adamitis here, but it's certainly something we would want to keep our finger on the pulse, right? Because we'd like to know how our actions are doing.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, completely understand and appreciate the need to provide periodic updates on our progress in the CAP. As previously discussed, the funding amount through the budget process for CAP and the various efforts that are identified in the CAP will also be important. I would imagine that not only the commission, but also the council would like to hear updates on this, because this is a very important document. Tonight is really the first step, not the last step in this important effort. And so we've heard some great feedback tonight. We are concerned about the obvious, which is the cost associated with all of the metrics involved in this effort. We would ask, at least for tonight, to hold off on that, so staff is in a better position to return once this plan is adopted and we are able to quantify really all those metrics that we need to with our team, with Ms. Mallory. We share the desire to come back to the commission and also for council to provide those updates. So perhaps we could maybe just hit pause on that item, and we understand the importance and we hear that tonight. But we don't want to commit without being able to give you an informed recommendation that we don't have an answer to tonight on the cost.
Thank you for that comment.
Can I just add
Go ahead.
I think that's exactly the point in wanting to include some sort of operational financial commitment so that we can move forward with some of the plans, so that when these pots of money become available, we have the specifics, we have the plan, we have the wattage, we have these things in place. Otherwise, we miss the boat altogether. And so, again, for something like this, which I completely understand and I support, having this contribution or these funds available would make it easier for you all to, again, be able to move all of this forward and be able to report, and the work that goes behind being able to do that. Trust that we know how stretched and stressed certain teams and departments are within our larger organization. It's not anything new, but that's exactly, I think, why we want to express and stress and emphasize, again, some financial commitment minimum, so that we are able to, whether it's in-house or whether it's ESA or some other consultant, to be able to, in a timely manner, report back on benchmarks, on progress, on opportunities. Because again, once these grants become available, we need to be prepared with a strong and robust, even legislative outreach team to coordinate with our state representatives, our congressional and federal representatives, and be at the front of the line. We're at the table now, and I'm so happy to hear that. But it's about when the money's available, are we going to find out 3 days after the fact, or 30 minutes after all the money's been gone, right? And so I hear you and I understand and I support you in that. But again, it further highlights, I think, the point that many of us have made in terms of item number 3.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Is it still on there? Oh, okay. All right. I'll give my comments real quick. I can appreciate staff for all the hard work that has gone in. Our consultant teams, thank you for all your hard work on this as well. This is a very large document, a very important document that is going to help shape the future of the city of Oxnard, like many of our documents do. Here's where I think I'm on the opposite side with my colleagues. These are my personal feelings. No staff member fed me any talking points. These are my own personal feelings based off of what I've been hearing. For item number 3 in Exhibit A, of setting a dollar amount, I feel handcuffs this plan and doesn't allow it to reach its full potential. As we have seen multiple times with our council, that they have gone in a different direction, oftentimes when it comes to budget, than what is recommended by the city. We have also have a lot of growing as a city to do in order to build back the trust of our residents. And I feel that setting a dollar amount for something that is new, such as the cap, for money that we receive as a city through the sales tax, sets the wrong precedent. I can also see in the future that the council may want to budget a larger amount, but we're saying, nope, just $1 million. But the city may be in a fabulous, outstanding, financial, stable foundation, but setting that dollar amount, I feel, again, handcuffs the cap plan. I believe the language that is being proposed by staff is the best language, as they are going to actively search out those funding sources from the state and federal government, as well as keeping this ahead of, again, there's a yearly budget that the city council has to go through in order to gain additional funding. This, I believe, staff's recommendation for language is the best approach versus putting a dollar amount that we all see it on social media that is going to have the residents turn on the city. And that is not what we need, nor what we want when we need their support for future projects or future anything. We want their participation, we want their feedback, but I believe we need to invest it in the appropriate way. Again, these are the comments of Daniel Chavez Jr., not city staff or any organization. This is my comments based off of my feelings and based off of the vibes that I receive from our residents. I don't agree with setting that dollar amount. Do I believe that not setting a dollar amount is going to prevent us from doing the work to implement the cap? No. Our staff has worked very hard on this plan. Our staff is in those meetings to get the information needed so that they are actively searching that funding source. And I completely understand your concerns, Commissioner Dr. Lopez, that if we don't hit that enter button fast enough that we could potentially lose money. But again, yearly, this cap plan could receive funding from the city council. And setting a dollar amount, I'm like, they can one year say, here's $2 million. But because we say 1 million, they're going to say, oh, they only believe they need 1 million. So it would be my recommendation, not a motion, a recommendation to the commission that you really look at number 3 fully, no emotions, fully look at it logically and see that the staff's recommendation is the best approach because they are going to actively search out those state and federal funding sources. And I believe that we can actually get a lot more than just relying solely on our city's funding sources. So those are my comments. If there's no additional comments, we'll look for a motion at this time. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
So I'll go ahead and get started and move the recommended action to receive the presentation on the climate action and adaptation plan, and B, receive public comments on the draft cap document, and C, approve resolution 2022-XX recommending city council adopt the cap and the addendum to the PEIR.
Chair, Commissioners, may I ask one point of clarification? The city attorney doesn't kill me here. We would hope that what we've heard in the principal conversation has been regarding items 2 and 3 in the Exhibit A. We have amended language suggested to respond to those questions. If I may, I'm hearing that the items 1 through 7 in the resolution, we provided language that the commission is asking for. So it would be recommended that we go not as long as we need here, but item by item on that discussion. So for example, item 1, where the commission expressed interest in changing the targets. I have not heard any conversation on that this evening. Our staff's understanding would be that you would go with staff's recommendation, but of course we would not want to be presumptuous. So that would be how I suggest we go through. Item 2, that is a source of conversation. We had suggested language. Same with item 3 with that discussion. The 80 to 100% in item 4, we do not recommend that. We do respect the commission's input. So I'm not confident where you landed on that. There was not significant conversation on the 100% issue. Again, also then the item 5. So not to belabor this, but we're just trying to get very clear direction in what we put into your resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Mallory. Mr. Roselle, we pay you the big bucks, so how do we approach this, even though there's a motion?
Commissioner, Dr. Lopez, my assumption is that you were moving what Ms. Mallory just stated. Okay. Okay, perfect.
And we thank you for that. And therefore, where there is, if you look on Exhibit A, there is a planning commission suggested revision, and then that we have counter recommendations to that. So that's what I'm just trying to get some direction on.
So Commissioner Dr. Lopez, you were proposing what staff's recommendation, correct? That's what I heard. Is that?
Thank you. So I'll just beat a dead horse.
You
Call
can
me a
stop
dead
soon,
horse.
but you can stop soon, but
Sorry. So therefore, what I'm hearing from the commission is they're supporting staff's recommendation with the exception of 2 and 3. Thank you for that.
We gonna beat a dead horse.
A little longer. So for clarification, I didn't understand what you were saying with the exception of 2 and 3. Can you clarify that, please?
Sure. And Ken, feel free to chime in as needed. So the resolution has Exhibit A,
Yes.
which reflected the input from the Planning Commission at the July 7th meeting. There were some comments that the commission recommended, and we had some things that we didn't agree with before the reasons articulated in the report. So in the conversation this evening, the focus has been on items 2 and 3 in Exhibit A. And so our understanding is that the commission agrees with staff's recommended language on item 1, item 4, item 5, item 6, item 7, and on items 2 and 3, we have suggested revised language in green, which we can show you on the screen. Jeff, if you can scroll. And so the focus of the conversation and the motion would be to be focusing on items 2 and 3 from the resolution. That's what we understood.
I guess put another way, Commissioner Lopez, is that your motion? What Ms. Mallory described, just to clarify for the record.
We'll just do a second. Vice Chair Rejo.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved in second to move staff's recommendation, but I'm actually going to propose a secondary motion that we divide it by keeping 2 and 3 on its own. Can we do that? Because I'm only asking that just because there has been a lot of conversations in regards to 2 and 3. So I would prefer that 2 and 3 get voted on separately versus where I think there's a good consensus of going with staff's recommendations on all the other ones. Am I doing this right or?
So, Chair Chavez, if I understand, you would like for the commission to take action on recommendations 2 and 3. Once that action occurs, and then the decision would be incorporated in the overall motion. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I want 2 and 3 by itself, just so that we have a consensus on that, which language
Yep.
to go with.
So your substitute motion is to take action on recommendations 2 and 3. And they would then be incorporated into the overall motion, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Vice Chair Rejo. It's been moved and seconded on the secondary. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, so
I think it,
here's my thing. My deliberative comments on this is that for number 2, I'm okay with going with staff's recommendation for language. And number 3, the same thing, staff's recommendation for language. I've already stated my reasons why, but that is my feelings on that. Is there Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm in agreement. So I don't have concerns with the alternative language at this point.
Any additional, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Yeah, in general, I agree with your number 2 since you brought that up. In regards to number 3, given the comments that everyone made, at this time, I am not going to propose different language than staff's recommendation. However, previous comments stated in regards to the $1 million amount, I believe the intention, at least in my perspective, was that would have been, if not now, in the future, that we would recommend an amount of at least 1 million. So there would be an option for the city to contribute more in the future. However, at this time, I am prepared to support staff's recommendation, given the comments received thus far. Thank you, Chair.
Any additional deliberative comments? Nope. Then let's go ahead and vote on that to go with staff's recommendation for language on 2 and 3.
Vice Chair Arnett,
Aye.
Commissioner Knapp,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll now return to the main one and incorporating the language of staff's recommendation for all 7, and that's right. Okay. Any deliberation on that, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair Chavez. And I appreciate the comments made on my possible amendment to the motion before us. The Planning Commission and staff members stated that there is a lot of work, no matter in what form, that an update or a review will be given back to the Planning Commission. I definitely understand it as someone who used to be on staff. And it was quite a lot when City Council demanded a little bit more than what we were expecting. I'd like to soften my initial language that the action that I was going to request was not as intense as a review that Commissioner Meyer was explaining, but I just wanted to make sure that, or I would like to request, not in a formal motion, but I would like to request that the Planning Commission receive some type of update. Doesn't even have to be a study session, but I would like the Planning Commission to receive something formal, possibly annually, but at least before the next iteration of the cap in 5 years. So those are my comments right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Seeing and hearing none, let's go ahead. Do you have some?
Thank you,
Commissioner
Chair.
Nash.
And I want to second what our Vice Chair just said. I think this issue is so important that perhaps a special meeting of the Planning Commission devoted sorely to what we are proposing in this plan, whatever metrics and other achievements have been accomplished in the previous year, that we would receive such an update and make recommended actions to staff and the city council. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Seeing and hearing none, it's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission receive a presentation on the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan and receive public comments on the draft Climate Action and Adaptation Plan and approve Resolution 2022-XX recommending that the City Council adopt the CAP plan and the addendum to the 2030 General Plan Program Environmental Impact Report. Can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Yes. Aye. Thank you for that. And thank you, Ms. Mallory, your staff, and thank you to our consultant team for working on this. So we'll go ahead and continue with our agenda to Planning Commission business. Commissioners, any business to bring before the commission? Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I want to make a few comments on the passing of our beloved Carmen Ramirez. She, I was at the SCAG meeting today via Zoom, and they devoted over an hour and a half of their busy day to eulogizing Carmen. It was quite touching. We all know how she was loved by our community, and tears are still being shed for her. I just want to put into a few words what Carmen did for Oxnard, a town she dearly loved. She was elected to a 4-year term on the city council in November 2010. Shortly thereafter, she asked me if I wanted to serve on the Planning Commission. I was quite surprised by her faith in me, and I hope I haven't disappointed her. As we all know, back then, Oxnard was kind of in a bad situation. The Ventura County District Attorney's Office had just searched City Hall as part of a probe conducted jointly with the FBI. They put out a report on the public integrity investigation of Oxnard city officials. We were very fortunate in having Carmen on the council, along with a lot of citizen activists. We began to jettison council members and staff who exacerbated the woes of Oxnard and replaced them with competent individuals with a work ethic and integrity, able to correct the decades of corruption at City Hall. And many of those people are in this room tonight. I'm very grateful for their efforts. Carmen helped select the city managers we needed to get the job done, eventually selecting our current city manager. She was aghast at the environmental injustice represented by the Halico Superfund site and led the charge to get the cleanup started and the Ormond Beach Wetlands Restoration Plan finalized. She supported the city manager's agreement with Genon's Ormond Beach Generating Station, allowing the power plant owner to set aside revenue and place $25 million into a trust fund so the facility can eventually be demolished and the site remediated. Carmen mounted the resistance to the South Shore project, which would have forever compromised the biological integrity of Ormond Beach and her wetlands. In 2016, when NRG wanted to build a gas-fired peaker plant at the site of the Mandalay Beach Generating Station, Carmen again led the resistance against yet another polluting and inappropriate industry on Oxnard's beaches. Carmen attended every meeting she could in person, an incredible feat of dedication and endurance. In July of 2017, Oxnard Council approved a resolution declaring Oxnard a safe city status, an effort led by Carmen. Carmen led the council to approve joining the Clean Power Alliance, a community choice aggregator at the 100% renewable energy default tier, which was no easy feat. Time and again, Carmen would speak forcefully for the weakest members of our community. She was the voice of compassion and empathy and love on the council dais. She always supported affordable housing and services for our neediest. Our city is a much better community now, thanks to her immense contributions, and we will not see the likes of Carmen anytime soon. So rest in peace, Carmen. We all miss you and we all love you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any additional business? Commissioner Dr. Lopez, followed by Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I have two sets of remarks. And the first, very much following in Commissioner Nash's remarks, is that I too remain shocked and at a loss for words for the passing of Supervisor Carmen Ramirez here in Oxnard a couple weeks ago. She was a guiding light for so many of us and for so many things. She championed people, our environment, children, the vulnerable, and justice in all its ways and forms. She truly was a people's politician, rare and few like her. The public outcry and far-reaching tributes demonstrated the impact she had on so many people, other supervisors, state legislators, former colleagues, and everyday people. Earlier today, like Commissioner Nash mentioned, she had a wonderful tribute and honor by the Southern California Association of Governments, which we mentioned earlier, SCAG, the nation's largest metropolitan planning organization, representing 6 counties, 191 cities, and more than 19 million residents, where she most recently served as vice president and was set to assume the role of chair and president. She loved her community, and her community loved and respected her back. She was an extraordinary leader who cared deeply. Principled, and as I mentioned previously on a social media post, she was wicked smart and an effective legislator and an incredible community representative. As many know, she was the first Latina to serve and chair the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. That is and was an incredible and historic moment and feat. Her unexpected and tragic passing is a loss for all of us in ways that many of us have not been able to fully grasp and still 2 weeks out wrap our minds around. She was an extraordinary, gifted, and beautiful soul. In more recent years, I reached out to her for support of our unhoused to put together care packages for unaccompanied minors that immigrated through our southern border via the caravans of a couple summers ago and who now reside in Oxnard, and for any number of COVID-related relief efforts. As many have said, she was generous, giving, and extremely gracious, not only with her time, but with her money. May she rest in peace, and God give her husband, Roy, her extended family, and all of us the strength to carry her legacy memory in the weeks, months, and years ahead. Viva Carmen Ramirez. The second part of my comments, and it builds on the first, is that in the last 2 weeks, I don't think a day has gone by that she doesn't come to mind. I think more recently in the last 48 hours, we've seen just an outcry and great concern expressed over the nuisance of the peaker power plant in South Oxnard. The power plant that I understand does not directly benefit the people of Oxnard and instead benefit folks in East County and into networks in LA when power is stretched and stressed, particularly during heat waves like the ones we expect over the weekend and into next week. The concern has kept people up at night, hundreds and not thousands of working people and families. And it is a nuisance and it is rude. It is not sharing good corporate responsibility. And I'm a bit annoyed that we are expecting more from our smaller cannabis industry with planning conditions of being a good neighbor. But the nuisance has been so great that both Oxnard Police and Port Hueneme Police have put out public statements earlier today, redirecting, I think, complaints away from the police department and our public safety team, more to, I believe it was a public advocate at the state or somebody. So when I say a day has not gone by that I don't think of Carmen in some shape, way, or form, I think with this in the last 48 hours, what would Carmen Ramirez do? Right? I think she would be annoyed. I think she would certainly be a voice for the working families and people, not only in Oxnard, because the nuisance has stretched and carried over into Camarillo and other unincorporated parts of the county as well. But nonetheless, I just wanted to bring that up because I think you all probably have heard about it. And I wonder if the planning department would be able to do anything to follow up with them on that. Again, don't know what the cause is, don't know why it's happening, but it is something that has been a great public nuisance, and would like for us to be able to follow up with them in the same way that we've said we would follow up with any number of applicants in our city if it deemed necessary. We certainly mentioned it with a Starbucks, and we've mentioned it with the 16 cannabis companies. So those are my remarks for today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the thoughts with regard to Carmen. I don't need to repeat what's already been said, but I considered Carmen a friend. Carmen actually appointed me also to the Planning Commission. And I remember after one of the earlier meetings, she left a voicemail saying just how proud she was of me and how much she appreciated the work that I was doing there on the commission. And, I kept that voicemail for about a year, it was very touching. And, she was an important person in our city. And it's very, very hard to replace someone like Carmen in a lot of ways. And there's some ways we can't replace her in terms of her spirit and the path that she forged for so many others of all walks of life, but definitely Latinas and in terms of role modeling and helping build up capacity for those that were to follow. So I think it's just important to share and expound upon that impact that Carmen has had to those that might not have known her as well, and to encourage those to keep a close eye on the process of replacing her, because that sits with the governor. And I think it's important that we all look at how can we find someone and support someone who would carry on her legacy of courage, of looking out for those less powerful, focusing on justice and environmental justice and progress in making our city and our county a better place for the least of us.
Thank you. Any additional comments? I'll just say real quick that anybody who ever watched City Council would have thought that Carmen and I hated each other. I was very blunt and naive my first time getting involved with city government. I have since grown up, hence all the gray hairs that I have, in order to be more tactful and respectful of everybody. I can honestly say that Carmen Ramirez has definitely became an ally of mine when she took time from her busy schedule. Mind you, council members are part-time, but the amount of work that she did, you would have thought that she was full-time. That she sat with me, we had coffee, and we spoke for an hour. And from that day on, I had always looked to her for guidance. Even more so when I was appointed to the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and she was elected as supervisor, that our conversations that we would have would always be of her telling me that I now have to really serve the city of Oxnard. There were situations on the commission that multiple people wanted her and I on certain advisory groups, and her comments would always be, I trust Daniel to represent the city of Oxnard in those discussions. I appreciated her confidence. I appreciated her guidance. I appreciated being able to reach out to her when I needed assistance or some advice or information, because she was extremely responsive. I don't think we will ever be able to replace her, and I don't believe we will ever be able to forget her. There is not a moment that goes by that I do not think about her, that there are meetings or events that I will attend and not be able to see her. And my heart goes out to her husband, Roy, who has also been active in our city for a number of years. And to everyone who has come across Carmen. It's a very tragic situation, but it means that as a city, we have to do more when it comes to our crosswalks, when it comes to changing this environment of dependency on vehicles. Years ago, I stood in the council chambers talking about the importance of addressing crosswalks and improving the safety of our pedestrians as well as our bicyclists. And it sounds and it's clear that we still have a lot of work to do. We all lost a great friend, a great leader, an ally. But as was mentioned multiple times, that we have to be able to carry on her drive in ensuring that every single person, regardless of their income status, regardless of their citizenship status, that they are protected, respected, and that we are that voice for the voiceless. So thank you. Any additional comments? Vice Chair Rejo.
I'd like to thank my fellow planning commission members and really the entire public on their stories about Supervisor Ramirez. I unfortunately am one of those people who never got to know her. I only had one conversation with her, 1 hour long conversation. So that was great. But really what I'll remember her as the first time I ever spoke to the city of Oxnard in public comment. You usually are not able to interact with anyone in the dais unless there's clarifying questions. And she asked me a clarifying question. And so I kind of, I held on to that for a few years until I got even more involved with Oxnard. And so that's what I'll remember her. But I am still continuing to look out for more stories about her because I have definitely felt what she's done for the city and the county and probably for the state for that matter. And so thank you to my fellow planning commissioners for that.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn to staff for their updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I would like to echo the kind words that the commission had for staff, in particular for the tremendous work effort that Ms. Mallory brought forth for your consideration tonight. It was a tremendous work effort, not only to Ms. Mallory and her team, her consultant team, but also I'd like to extend our thanks and appreciation to our colleagues in Public Works and all of the staff who were involved in this important effort. But a special thanks to Ms. Mallory for this important work of her tonight. As you saw, this is no small task. And as I said earlier, tonight is really the first step, not the last step, of an important effort going forward involving several years of work efforts, which We want to thank the commission's support for this effort. Greatly appreciated. Also, our legal team, Mr. Rizal is always a tremendous resource to us and all of the work efforts that we have. So we do have some great news that Mr. Pearson will be sharing with you in terms of our recruitment efforts that I've spoken to previously. So we're continuing to make good progress in that area, and we're excited about the future.
Good evening, Commissioners. So a couple of comments to Vito's point that he mentioned regarding recruitment efforts. It's on.
You can use mine.
There we go. It's a little bit better. So with regards to recruitment efforts, we do have 2 additional staff members coming on board for the planning department. We have a new assistant planner, which will be starting on September 6th. So on Tuesday next week, Serena Gonzalez. So she'll be joining our planning team. Also, we have Miriam Lorera, who will be joining us as an administrative services specialist. She will be taking Dee's old position. So you guys will become very familiar with her. She will be here at the Planning Commission meetings, and then also kind of take this opportunity to thank Roy for taking care of this meeting and, basically his first meeting, actually kind of running everything. So thank you and great job. And the last thing is that I believe many of you guys are aware that prior Commissioner Sanchez has stepped down. And so we have going to City Council on September 6th is the appointment of a new commissioner. It's Ann Zeldorf, and I'm Zeldorf. Okay. Yeah, so I'm sure we'll all have a great time trying to pronounce that one, but so if appointed, then she would be joining us here on the commission for the following meeting. So and I believe that's it in terms of
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Also, we want to share that in Kathleen's division in long-range planning, we have a new arrival. Principal planner Jasmine Kim will be starting on the 19th. So September is going to be a great month with some new staff coming into the community development department. And it's great to have new arrival of staff, particularly given what's happened tonight with the CAP. So we're looking forward to the added help.
Awesome. Vice Chair Rejo.
Yes, there was an email sent to the Planning Commission in regards to a possible special meeting on September 29. Is that still going to happen? And if we don't know, when we'll receive notice? Thank you.
So Vice Chair Rejo, at this point, it has not been set. The meeting was just to gauge availability. We should know in the coming week or so whether or not that meeting will be taking place, but we'll definitely let you guys know as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and congratulations to all the new people. I'm glad to see women pretty much taking over the planning department at this point. Is there any questions for staff? Yes.
Follow up, or if there's anything at this point in terms of the city, the planning commissioner, the planning staff, is there anything we would be able to do about the nuisance with the South Oxnard power plant? If not, I understand, but I think just out of responsibility to the public, if there's anything we can do to follow up on that, or just additional public information would be appreciated. Thank you.
Chair and Commissioner Lopez, we're aware of this. We did receive emails through code enforcement, and our code enforcement manager was in contact. It and is in contact, or was in contact with the property owner out there. So we are aware of that. Yes.
And this is as of today. I believe that communication
as
was
of today.
today. Yes.
Awesome. So if there's no objection to adjournment, we will be adjourning to our next regular meeting on Thursday, September 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And we will hopefully be in the new remodel, fingers crossed, council chambers. Or otherwise we'll be here once again. And as I said at the top of the meeting, we will be adjourning our meeting in the memory of Supervisor Carmen Ramirez. And with that, as always, thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, staff, for all their hard work. Our IT for setting it up in the library. Hopefully, you'll have a nice new home to go back to in the council chambers. And thank you to the public for their participation. And we will stand adjourned. Thank you.